too politically incorrect where we talk about stuff that most people probably won't agree with. But anyways, today's video is all about why the $15 minimum wage, whether you like it, the idea, or hate the idea, why the idea is factually a bad idea. Most of our country does not currently participate in a minimum wage around the $15 mark. If you notice the states that do, they're going to be mostly on the coastlines of the country, the East Coast and West Coast. West Coast in particular, where I am currently located in California, we're almost to a $15 minimum wage. Currently, I believe we're at $14 an hour, and with plans to go to $15 an hour in the near future. If you've noticed a trend of people wanting to leave certain parts of the country, the parts of the country that most of those people are trying to get away from are, in fact, going to be those states with the higher minimum wage. The minimum wage increases have one key factor that is undeniable of what they're going to cause is an increase in the cost of living in those states. I'm very much against a $15 minimum wage increase, as me and my wife are currently looking to move to Texas. We're going to be moving probably close to the end of the year, hopefully sooner rather than later. Especially if this bill gets passed, Texas and a lot of the states surrounding it, and a lot of the states in the middle or Midwest currently operate with a minimum wage of $7.25 an hour. That may seem obscenely low to a lot of people, but the facts are that the cost of living in those states is substantially lower, and the reason for that is because of the lower minimum wage. A low or no minimum wage enforces the idea that a minimum wage position is more for a high school or college student, somebody that needs a part-time job while they work on building up to their career. Most people will not work at that minimum wage level in states with a lower minimum wage. They'll strive and work for a better paying position over the course of their life. In fact, I've worked one or maybe two minimum wage jobs in my life while I lived in California, and the last one I believe was at the age of 17. Most people will try not to work at the minimum amount of wage. Those are generally jobs for students, college students, high school students, summer jobs, stuff like that. That's what the minimum wage positions are in our country normally going to be in vast swaths of the country, or swaths of the country. The problem with increasing the minimum wage in a lot of these states with a lower minimum wage, you're going to inherently greatly increase the cost of living. Now, this isn't going to really affect the coastline states because the coastline states are already so close to the minimum wage. They're not going to see a lot of that effect right away, or at all for that matter. Like in California, I doubt the minimum wage increase is going to do anything at all to affect our state because of a $1 increase. But in, like I said, states like Texas and stuff where a lot of the jobs I'm looking to get out there would be paying me $22.50 an hour, which is 3 times the state's minimum wage, which is going to make it very easy for us to make the transition and not feel like we made a mistake. It's going to really give us kind of that room for me to be a sole breadwinner and for my wife to focus on building up a new client base for her business, breeding rats and birds and other animals, which is what she wants to do as a full-time career. But with the minimum wage going up to $15 an hour, instead of making 3x what the minimum wage is, I'm effectively taking a 33% cut in my buying power in that state, because now instead of making 3 times over the minimum, I'm only going to be making 50% over the minimum, or a 50% increase, so 150% of the minimum instead of 300% of the minimum. So a 50% cut in my actual buying power. This is going to really increase the housing market in Texas. It might also decrease the amount of people wanting to move to Texas, which could be either a good or a bad thing, but it's really going to affect the overall climate there with job options. You're going to see a lot of places either have to increase their cost of goods or services or decrease the amount of employees. One of those two things have to happen. You can't simply raise the minimum wage, which in Texas and a lot of places, that $15 is going to go over what they're paying some of their long-term employees, not just people working there at minimum wage, which is going to affect the cost of goods and services, or it's going to affect the amount of people they can actually have working for them. Now, I see a lot of people saying how great this minimum wage increase is going to be, and be it I live in California, and I have a lot of friends on my Facebook and stuff in California that are unaware of how big of a difference this will make in other parts of the country, because it's going to be a really non-factor for California, and a lot of people are probably thinking, well, this is going to make a lot of the rest of the country better because they're getting up to speed with California. And I'd like to argue that this is going to level the playing field across the country and negatively impact large portions of the country. Not positively, but negatively impact large portions of the country. It's going to affect the cost of living in, I would say, about 80% of the country, that the minimum wage is close to the federal minimum or is at slightly above the federal minimum, very negatively increasing their cost of living and making California and other states that already have been working with a $15 minimum wage maybe not look like such, how to put this, really bad places to live. By leveling the cost of living across the entire nation, it will, I guess you could say, unify the nation in some ways, but it's also going to unify it by lowering places to the standard instead of trying to fix what's wrong in places that have already gone down a very stupid road and negatively impacted the state, which is why we're leaving. Like, honestly, I want out of the state. I want out of the state tomorrow. I want out of the state 2 months ago. I cannot understand what is going wrong with this state in the regards of how people have not seen what has been happening to the state for years and years and years and years, and keep electing the same idiot people to make the same idiot mistakes and trying to buy their way out of a problem when there's no money to buy your way out of. You've seen lots of people over the course of 2020 leaving the state, people that have relatively high followings, relatively high income, leaving the state, not just to avoid the large amounts of income tax in the state, but also to get away from a lot of the politics in this state that are negatively impacting their chosen way of living. I don't own a gun. I've never wanted to own a gun, but I'd like to be able to if I want to. I would like to get more into doing outdoor stuff, and I love venison. I would love to be able to go hunt deer at some point in time, but I don't feel like, as something I haven't had a huge desire to do, I don't feel like jumping through all the hoops to get a gun license in California. I currently pay an obscene amount of income tax in the state, and with the changes to some of the income tax laws that make it so that you can't necessarily write off your state income tax against your federal income tax, that's going to negatively impact a lot of states with higher income tax brackets. You're not going to see a big tax return like you would normally see in a state with a high income tax, because you're not getting any of your federal income tax back because of your state income tax. I personally think an income tax is probably a good thing on a state level. We've seen states like Texas where the property tax is higher because of the income tax being lower, and that does affect a lot of things, because that there needs to be a revenue stream somewhere. A lot of states have sales tax, some states don't have sales tax. There's a lot of different ways of taxing. I don't know how this is going to affect a lot of states without an income tax, the minimum wage increase, as far as increases in property tax or sales tax. But I feel like those are things that are going to have to happen, because if you're in a state that's making the minimum wage is $7 an hour, and you're increasing the cost of living in that state, something's got to give. Something's got to give. The state employees and stuff are going to want more money, and that money's got to come from somewhere. So I would expect to see a lot of places increasing their sales tax. If they don't have an income tax, increasing the property tax, or just the property tax being increased inherently with the price of property in that state increasing because of the reduction of overall buying power, unless you see a mass exodus from a lot of those states. So those are my thoughts on why you should really think about the long-term effects of the increase in minimum wage rather than the short-term benefits to you or individuals that you know that are currently working at or below the proposed federal minimum wage. Anyways, guys, if you like the video, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Tell me your thoughts down below on what you think of the federal minimum wage increase. And yeah, I'll see you guys in the next one.